Right now, labor markets are tight. So in theory, at least, if you want a job, you can get one. But how much will the types of jobs that are available change in the years ahead? And are we prepared to change with them? Jim Stanford is an economist and director of the Center for the Future of Work. Jim, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Amanda.
So there is this feeling that workers have the upper hand right now in negotiations. We've seen some evidence of that in recent agreements. Do you think that's fair to say?
I think it's fair to say that workers have some bargaining power right now. The question is, how long is it going to last? And remember, so far, we've actually seen real wages relative to inflation decline since we came out of the pandemic. Now, they're rising now. Right now, wages are growing faster than inflation, but they haven't made up the ground that was lost in 2021, 2022 when inflation took off. At the same time, we are seeing, of course, the impacts of higher interest rates and other measures designed deliberately to take away some of that bargaining power, including the very rapid increases in labor supply that we're seeing, driven mostly by very rapid immigration. So unemployment is growing, and I do expect that this bargaining power that workers are wielding right now likely to dissipate a bit over the next year or two.
It seems clear that workers are thinking not just about higher wages, but about protecting jobs in the future as technology changes. They're focused on things like being part of that process and getting new skills. Are they thinking properly about how to keep their jobs?
Yeah, that's such an important point, Amanda. A great example of exactly what you're saying is this new agreement between Unifor and the major automakers here in Canada. A big feature of it is exactly around transition towards electric vehicle manufacturing instead of the internal combustion engines. And how is that transition going to occur? How are workers going to be protected? How will they get new skills? How will they move from a plant that used to make, transmissions to one that makes batteries? So I think that Canadian trade unionists and employers are cognizant that the world is changing and changing rapidly, and we'd like to do it in as smooth and fair a way as possible.
There can be a lot of fear about where jobs will go, including if a recession comes. What do you tell people about the right skills that they might want to have? And I guess I'm thinking especially of young people, Jim.
I think, Amanda, for the most part, the hype about the impact of technology and artificial intelligence and robotization and so on is definitely overstated. For sure, these things are happening, but they are not going to eliminate the need for human labor. Absolutely not. That has never happened. Going back even to the invention of the spinning jenny in the Industrial Revolution, we've never actually seen mass technological unemployment. I'm much more worried about a recession and kind of the traditional drivers of unemployment than I am about artificial intelligence. In terms of the skills that young people should learn, because it's so dynamic, you cannot predict what exact technology you're going to need on your job in 10 or 15 or 20 years. So don't worry about trying to learn the right language to code or anything like that. Think about your human skills, your capacities, your leadership, your flexibility, your communications, your teamwork. Those so-called soft skills, I think that term is wrong, but those skills are actually recognized by employers as ultimately being more important.
One thing we know for sure is that Canadian businesses have not invested in themselves, and that threatens our overall growth. They're not investing in new technologies the way they could be or should be. Could government policy do better on that front and encourage businesses to do things they're not already doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great irony. We all talk about the risk of robots, but in Canada, the big problem clearly is we do not have enough robots, not that we have too many, and other types of machinery and equipment and technology. Business investment in machinery has actually fallen by half since the turn of the century as a share of our GDP. We've been all obsessed with resource extraction and the banking system and real estate, and not paying nearly enough attention to technology, machinery, and equipment. So we do need more of that. It'll be a range of measures. Some of it is going to be around industry policy. We're seeing the government playing a big role in this transition to electric vehicles, for example. Tax policy, of course, is relevant, but we've learned that just tax handouts aren't really doing the trick. They've got to be tied to particular commitments by businesses to new products and new technologies.
We've got to leave it there, Jim. So great to have you with us for this.
Thank you very much, Amanda.
Jim Stanford is an economist and director of the Center for the Future of Work. Workers have had the power to make demands like hybrid work, but slowly but surely it seems to be tilting back in favor of the employer. So which pandemic-era innovations at work will we hang on to? Peter Capelli is a professor at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Thanks for being with us, Peter.
Thank you.
So let's start right there. It does feel a little bit as though the power is shifting back to the employer. Is that fair?
It's probably true a little bit, but I think the big story here is that we're just kind of all over the place. There's census data now showing that 70+% of U.S. employers have no remote workers whatsoever. It's really a big city, big company phenomenon. About 80% of the Fortune 500 have some kind of remote issue going on. So the big story, I think, is we're kind of, all over the place, and employers are trying to get more people back, but they've kind of backed themselves into some corners too.
How we manage people in pandemic did seem to improve a little bit. And to your point, this does apply to certain jobs, and I'm mindful of that. But in that context, are we sliding back into old ways of managing that overlooks employees in favor of some other metrics of the business?
I think, yes. I think companies in 2022 sort of stopped thinking, okay, we're going to just bring everybody back. It had been 2 years with people out of the office. And so they moved toward policies of hybrid. And I think for those companies, it's going to be hard for them to back up. The reason is driven, I think, by finance issues. They also shrunk their footprints during the pandemic. And with remote work, that is, they cut their office space. So they can't get everybody back in, even if they wanted to. So they have hoteling-like policies now, which meant that you're kind of moving people around in offices. You have to call and make a reservation if you're coming back. So they can't literally go back now if you shrunk your office space. The other thing they've done is they've created teams that are all over the place. So we had some vacancies. We have somebody apply inside the company, but they don't live near that office. We give them the job anyway. So, they kind of have no choice but to be hybrid here going forward.
We do see change on the horizon, and we know some of these things, of course, happen slowly and then they happen all at once, as is famously said. Some of it will dramatically change how we work, what kind of jobs we're doing. Do you feel as though professionally, as we manage people, we're prepared for that? As AI, for instance, replaces jobs, do we know what we're going to do with people? Are we able to retrain or train new jobs?
Well, I guess my sense about the ChatGPT, the large language models things, we've been looking into this for other projects, is that it doesn't look like it's going to replace nearly as many jobs as the pundits say. It looks like it's going to be much more an add-on, more useful information coming out. But I think in general, back to hybrid work, we don't really have a very good sense about how well it's working. There's clearly a sense some things are just not going so well. Like, how do you onboard new hires, for example? Almost everybody seems to think that's hard to do when you don't have people in a regular office and the new hires don't know who to learn from. And, that's a big issue because average turnover in U.S. Employers about 30% per year. Some places really small, some places bigger. But you've always got a bunch of new people coming in, and if you can't get the new ones up to speed, that's a problem that is not going away. So there's a bunch of things we just don't really have a good sense of how they're really working, nor how we're going to solve them. A lot of things got done informally in offices, like, I want some information from you, so I just stop by your desk and grab you and get it quickly. When we're remote, maybe I ping you, but do you get back to me or not? Well, there's no real rules about that. So there's a lot of things we probably are going to have to create rules on, things that just got done informally before.
We got to leave it there. It's so good to have you, Peter. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Peter Capelli is a professor at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. Coming up, accessible childcare is supposed to make it easier for working parents, but is the promise being delivered?